welcome to San Francisco International Airport, and welcome back to the iniBuilds A-310. I got to tell you, this airplane has really kind of caught on in the world of Microsoft Flight Simulator, and I've got to tell you, I'm really not surprised because this is a really, really great airplane. Hello, I'm Dave. I do the Spy Flight over on Twitch, and every week or so I like to come over here to YouTube and do a little bit more of an in-depth type of a flight as I talk about workflow. Oh God, that sounds terrible. But you know, how to basically fly the airplane so that you can take off and land and look like the pros here. As I always like to say here on the YouTube videos, it's not about the right way versus the wrong way. This is about what's working for me, and I gotta tell you, this airplane did just get an update here. So we've got a brand new update for this airplane, and it's really getting, it's a really nice airplane. And you combine an airplane like this one, the iniBuilds A310, which was over on X-Plane and is now moved over here. You combine that with the incredible scenery engine that we have in Microsoft Flight Simulator, and it is really becoming a fun flying experience here for sure for a lot of people that like small airplanes and big jets like this one. So what are we going to do today? Well, let's go ahead and fly the iniBuilds A310 with the latest beta updates. Now today, we all do the standard ILS approaches, but there's some runways and some airports that only have an RNAV approach, and the procedure for setting that up is a little bit different, but it's not too different. Add-ons that I'm using, Navigraph, SimBrief, and SimToolkit Pro, including the new Navigraph app, which I'm really enjoying. Microsoft Flight Simulator Live Weather. I have one other... I do have the payware for San Diego, but the only other app that I'm using is something called Pushback Helper. Today, also talking about the latest beta updates. So you have to be on the Microsoft Flight Simulator beta program to be able to get these updates. And normally I don't do the betas because that can kind of really rock your world if you're doing a live stream. But I really wanted to get the updates on this airplane, so there you go. They've done a little bit of rework on lights for taxi and nav lights. They've done some in-sim ATC comms are working properly. So my guess is that means you have to turn the microphone on. We'll chat about that when we get in the cockpit. They're also swatting bugs. They're doing some performance optimization, and they're also taking a look at some of the sounds, although I do like the sounds on this airplane. So what can you do today? Well, I like to suggest stop the video or pause the video and load up the sim, fly along with me because I try to go fairly slowly with what buttons I'm pushing so you can learn which buttons to push on this increasingly complex jetliner. The cool part about YouTube is you can pause and restart the video. You can also roll it back if there was something that you missed, and that's going to help you, learn the airplane too. I also like to suggest that in a couple of days after you watch the video and fly with me, do your own hometown flight. That way, flying out of your own hometown airport, you recognize the landmarks. It just helps you remember the stuff that you learned about this cool airplane. And if you've got the time, certainly hope you'll come join us over on Twitch. The live spy flights are Tuesday through Sunday at 1900 Zulu. Let's see, wintertime, that is 2 o'clock Eastern time in the United States. And they're all group flights. We do a combination of multiplayer and also flights on VATSIM. The flight plan for today is San Francisco International Airport to the RNAV Zulu to runway 27 in San Diego. Real world, San Francisco is blasting off of 01 right, doing the offshore departure to one little checkpoint in the sky, then COMEX into San Diego. Our cruise for today is 37,000 feet, should be about an hour and a half flight. And our distance is about 429 miles. So this is a real simple flight. They do this flight all the time, so it is a real-world flight. Over here in Microsoft Flight Simulator, we do have the latest weather cranked in here. So the latest real-world weather is in. I've also got the current time, so this is going to be a really nice sunrise flight. And that's another really cool tip about Microsoft Flight Simulator. If you can fly around sunrise or sunset, the scenery is going to be even better. And sunrise and sunset, they really actually have that figured out in Microsoft Flight Simulator. A couple of websites that I use for the flights. One of them is this one here. This is called DIST. Link, of course, in the description below. And this is the digital latest for the United States. Now, what you can do is come down here, and this is most of the big airports, including a couple of middle airports, medium-sized airports. And so this is actually what San Francisco has. It's information Oscar. Winds are 260 at 11 knots, 10 miles visibility, clear skies, the altimeter 2999. It says the departure and arrival runways, one left, one right, and of course there is bird activity in the vicinity of the airport. Now, let's say we're not flying in the United States. One of my favorite places to fly is in Germany. One of my favorite airports to depart out of is EDDM. I like flying, Munich's a cool place to fly out of. So you could go to something like FlightAware or Flight Radar 24. And if you go to the bottom, there's the Munich page. There's a bunch of departures and arrivals. But all the way at the bottom here is EDDM weather. And I just highlighted, there is, so right now winds are variable at 2 knots. Ceiling and visibility, awesome. It's 4 degrees. The QNH is 1014. So you can also go and get that. I'm over here on Flight Radar 20 on FlightAware. I bet you can get the same information on Flight Radar 24. Link in the description. That should help you be able to go and get real world weather no matter where you are. So that's one of the tools that I use. Another thing that I really like is the new version of Navigraph. Wow, do I like this. And I've already gone and imported the flight here. The thing that I wanted to show is along the bottom here. I call this the stack of charts. And back in the old days, the real world pilots had those big briefcases and books and books and books of charts and stuff, right? So one of the things that they would do is stack up their charts the way they need them, in the order that they need them. So my stack of charts down here is, here's parking gates. We are over at Foxtrot 16. So if we're on VATSIM, we know what gate we're at. Here is the airport map coming in out of Foxtrot 16. We can start to see our taxi route down to runway 1 right is the one that I'm going to go for on this one. Then there is the offshore departure. Offshore, this is the one where you take a tight turn and turn around to Whammy out there, which is cool. By the way, one of the things that the ATC on VATSIM really wants us to start doing is take a look for something like this, the top altitude on the, so all they'll say is climb via SID, and they expect you to go and see if there's a top altitude, just like the real pilots. So I went to see there's no top altitude, so we'll just do our final cruise of 37,000 feet. And this is going to take us down to Santa Catalina Island. And after Santa Catalina Island, we're going to pick up the Comics arrival, come on in here, and we're going to take it down to Cloman at 6,000 feet. As you can see here at Cloman, 6,000 feet, we get to do the loop-de all the way on down here to our platform altitude of 2,000 feet. Platform altitude is the official term. I like to call it the final plunge altitude. And then we're going to come down here. Even though I'm flying a Pan Am livery, we'll go down to where United usually parks, which is the simulated airline and the real world airline that I fly an awful lot as far as a passenger. Not that I've flown much with COVID and stuff, but there you go. So here's the thing. I have the wrong chart here. It's so easy to fix your charts. Just hit edit and then delete the one you don't want and then go done. Then go and click the charts tab, San Diego, charts, taxi, and let's see, parking spots and coordinates. That's the wrong one. Is this the right one? I've noticed they're a little bit on the slow side today, so it's a little bit slow for us here. But I believe this is the one we want. There it is. And yeah, United parks down here, I believe. So we'll grab 40 or something like that coming in. All right, we're all set and ready to go. Let's, flight plan is pretty much done. A couple of interesting pages I'm going to use today that I don't normally use, but so this is our first page. And the first page is going to give us our altitude, 37,000 feet, our zero fuel weight. It's going to give us our block fuel for today's flight, which is 9.7 kgs. We need to have 3.8 in the tanks when we land, unless we have to divert or hold. Next page is going to tell us what our alternate is, which is LAX. Page number 3, this tells us how many passengers we need, 235 and 6.4 kgs of cargo. That basically is going to give us our zero fuel weight. It's an hour and 35-minute flight. Here's our schedule information. And then after that, there is the flight plan. But then we're going to go to page 6. And page 6 is going to give us our descent winds. And so that's going to be a nice thing for us to go and plug into. All right, so all of that is looking good. Let's go ahead and hop into the best seat in the house, and that's up here. Now, it's a little dark in the airplane right now, so let's go ahead and hit the plug. That's usually my first stop with starting to fly. And here we go. Let's see, I'm going to put chocks into place. I'm going to also call a jetway. We'll see if the jetway actually works. It's a little weird here at the gate. Let's open bulk cargo. Let's open aft cargo, and we'll open forward cargo. And so that goes, all of those open. Now, you don't have to do this with this airplane. So this is one of those little immersion kinds of things. And it looks like we got the gate in place too. So we've got the gate in place, so that's kind of a nice thing. All right, so those are the things that I usually do as far as getting the airplane ready to go. Now we're going to come down here. The next thing we're going to do is the weights page. And the weights page has changed. This is a very, very nice update, and I'm so grateful for this one. I've gone and I usually, before a flight, I take all of the information that I know that I'm going to need and I put it here in this text file. It's called the flight strip. And if you look in the description of the video here on YouTube, you'll see that I've copied most of the flight strip. I didn't include the MD-11 weights that I have here as notes for me, but I've cut and pasted this into the description. You can cut and paste this into your own notepad and change it all you want, but this is how it is that I keep track of everything that I need to keep track of. So we know our passenger load today is 235. Used to be you had to do this slider, which doesn't work great. Just click where it says packs, click the 0, and the number again is 235, and confirm it. Passengers, that's all it takes. So nice. Cargo for today is 6.4. Click the 0, go 6.4. Confirm it. Next thing is fuel. Fuel for today is going to be 9.8. So 9.8. And confirm it. There it is. It's done. That's all you've got to do. Now then, there's a new thing you do here. You can go and hit the apply button here. I believe that loads the airplane and that we're done. There's a thing between plan and live. So what I feel like you do when you do live, let's see, the fuel is 9.8, 9.8. I feel like what this does is this just stops this from you changing it after you're ready to go. So, but I haven't read that far in there to find out what's going on. But the plane's loaded. We're good to go with that. The next thing we can do is we can hit the cloud. And if we go and update the METAR, nothing happens. That's because we haven't loaded the flight plan in, and we don't do the flight plan over here. So now is the time that we get to do the thing that flight simmers love to do, and that's turn on the airplane. And if you look up here to the upper right, all we've really got here is an avail light. That's about it. There's a flashlight you can turn on, but I know that right here in the middle is battery 1, battery 2, and battery 3. Let's also go down and we're going to hit the power switch. And then I also know that over here is the dome light. And we can turn the dome light up a little bit. So I kind of know the way around, but it is definitely gets a little bit dark here. You could turn on the Microsoft Flight Simulator flashlight. I don't remember where that is in this, but there's a way to get that done. Okay, so we do have these things turned on here. The next thing I'm going to do is turn on the galley power, because the most important piece of equipment in the airplane is the coffee machine. So there you go. We're also going to come down here and we're going to turn on the nav and logo lights. And there's two systems. They're identical. I look over at the computer. The computer says today is the 28th. That's an even day. So I use nav and logo light system number 2. Other pilots, sometimes if the captain is flying, it's logo light system number 1. If the first officer is flying, it's logo system number 2. There's just different ways of doing that, and that's the way that I've been doing it here on the Spy Flight. Up here, there is a fuel switch, and that fuel switch is this one up here, and this is inner tank pump 2. We're going to turn that fuel pump on right now so that we can look down here, and we're going to hit the master switch on the APU and start up the APU. I used to not turn on that fuel pump. I've started turning on the fuel pump because I saw a real-world pilot trying to do a flight in this, and they turn on the fuel pump. So you actually turn on one of those fuel pumps here. If it's chilly outside, I'll also come down here and start turning on the window heaters and start to pop those up. And that pretty much, aside from the no smoking, because we're going to fuel the airplane, and so we're going to go ahead and turn on no smoking. And our airplane is slowly coming to life. Looking down here, there is another knob, and this is one of those knobs that is, there's two in the same, control here. So the top knob, let's do the bottom one first, and that one is the pedestal and panel, and I turn that up, and you can see the backlighting here is turned up here. The top knob, and if we slide over here, you can see it says overhead lights, and so we're going to turn that. And I usually just crank those up, so just they're all the way up. You don't have to make the VIT sound or anything. And that takes care of, if we look now, the overhead panel is really easy to see. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to zoom in here, and we're going to look over here. Let's look down by the pilot's left knee. And you see where it says captain and center instrument lights? Hey, let's turn that up too. And you can see the backlighting is there, and I'm going to go and do 2 clicks. 1, 2, and that is a main panel instrument floodlight. Okay, I haven't done anything for the co-pilot today. Generally, the co-pilot I leave alone, but there you go. Next thing that I like to do is I'll look down here, and I'm going to gently move my control column, and I'm going to move my, I'm just going to move my controllers around and make sure that all of my controllers are connected. This is now the pilots do these things, a little bit later in the flow. So this is a computer pilot thing. And if one of our controllers has unplugged itself, this is the USB check. So I'm making sure my speed brake lever works. Make sure the flap lever works. So I'm just making sure that all of my USB stuff works. You go through, you take so much time to set up these airplanes now, then you discover, oh, my USB controllers don't work. That becomes annoying. So I usually do my control checks then. We can do the official control checks later, but I do that usually at the beginning because I've been burned by that before. The last thing is there's a knob here under the autopilot. I'm going to turn that all the way up, and this is going to be the auto throttle. This is basically, all of this is going to get backlit, and that just makes everything so much easier to see. And our airplane's coming to life. So the next thing to do is let's go over here, and I usually do menu. And this airplane does have an ACARS system, and I usually do this on the first officer side. There's ACARS, and if you've put in your username for SimBrief, you can just click SimBrief, and it's pending and goes and gets your flight plan, and that's really pretty cool. Then I'm going to hit clear. Sometimes it makes this the init page. Usually what I'll do with this is just go back to menu over here, and then FMS, and then I actually do all of the other stuff on the pilot side. So over here we've got our nav data is good, so that's great. Let's go to init page 1, and you can see San Francisco to San Diego is already in there, and that's a good thing. So now we can go, and we're going to look all the way up here, and we're going to do the nav system. And the nav system up here, it's kind of spread out, but it's the same thing you've seen over in the A320. So just go to nav, and it goes to battery operated. Check that to see if that happens first, and then after that goes out, it goes into align mode. Okay, then we'll kind of come over here, and I believe that you do the first officer side next. That's IR system number 2, battery, and then align mode. And then there is another one In the middle, that's number 3. Same deal, battery and align mode. Okay, so those are all nicely set. Next thing that I'll usually do is we'll come over here and flight recorder, you hit ground control and turn it on. That way the flight recorder is recording you as you're setting up the airplane. You know, in case you hit the AZ5 button, you know, that takes care of that. And then the last thing we're going to do is we're going to look down here, and there is oxygen, and we're going to turn that on and make sure it's in the green zone. The only other green zone things that they usually check when they first fire this thing up is they're going to check the hydraulics. And the blue system, I believe, is always the lowest on this one, but as long as it's in this nice little green zone here, then you've got plenty of hydraulic fluid. And our airplane continues to come to life. Down here, it's now popped in. It says Align IRS. So that isn't going to show up until you turn on the IRSs on the upper panel. And all you have to do is after you've put in your San Francisco to San Diego or your flight, just hit Align. And then I will look down here and do the clear button. Because I'll do it first and then do the clear button because sometimes I'll hit the clear button and then get distracted and I've forgotten to align it, and it takes about 7 to 10 minutes to align depending upon where you are in the world. So that's kind of a good thing to do. Align it and then clear the little thing that reminds you to do what it told you to do. Cost index. So I've been looking around to try and find cost index, and I found a PDF, and this gives me an A300, A310 cost index table. And so this is time. So if you want low time or high time, and then low fuel or high fuel. And right in the middle is 65 on this table. So I'm right now going between 65 and 80. Generally, this airplane cruises at about Mach 0.81. So if I do 65 and put that in as a cost index, that's the best that I've got for you right now. I'm still learning about that. Flight ID, we are Pan American, PAA 441. I'm flying Pan American instead of my usual United or Lufthansa. United never flew these airplanes, so we're trying to have a little bit of immersion here. Okay, our APU is up and running. So if the APU is up and running, let's go over here and we're going to do the APU bleed, and we'll see some pack turns on. We've also got the crossfeed that automatically turns on, and we can go ahead and start ventilating the airplane so that we can, you know, if somebody went to Taco Bell, we're in good shape. And our airplane continues to come to life here. If we were on VATSIM, about now would be a great time to go and try and get your clearance. So we'll go in, okay, we've got our clearance. So that's also going to give us our runway. And so now at this point in time, we can come down here and start assembling the flight plan. So F plan, San Francisco, and we know that they're going to be blasting off on the ones. We've chosen 1 right, so 01 right. We are doing the offshore 2 departure, and we are going to SXC. And there we go, Santa Catalina Island. So all of those are looking pretty good. Now we can go down here a little bit, and that's going to, we should, if we're good pilots, we're checking and making sure all of our waypoints are correct. Sim pilots, we get to kind of slack a little bit. Now, the flight plan that I got was a little bit wrong. So this also took me direct to McKee and LAX for my flight plan. We eliminated that. We changed it to go to Santa Catalina. So I'm going to delete McKee, and I'm going to delete LAX. We're not going there. Clear LAX. There we go. So we're not going to those airports. And we're not going to those checkpoints. Now we're going to San Diego, and we're going to go to the Star. Nav accuracy is updated, which is good. And for our flight today, we're doing the RNAV Zulu for the runway. RNAV Zulu to runway 27. We are doing the Comics to arrival via Santa Catalina and via Cloman. How did I know about all those? Well, in the process of assembling the approach, I went over here and I looked at the approach and I saw there's Santa Catalina, and the other end of this is Cloman. We've also got another checkpoint in here called NATO. If you look though at the approach here, there's Cloman and there's a Jade, but there's no NATO in here. So we may want to go ahead and pull NATO out of it too. That doesn't show up for some reason. That's probably because that's part of another approach. So that's how it is that I knew where those were. And so let's insert this into the flight plan. And let's kind of come down here. We're at the top, San Francisco, intercept, top of climb. And there's top of descent at Bennett. Okay, there is Santa Catalina. After the approach on Santa Catalina, so Santa Catalina and then Slayer. So let's go ahead and remove the route discontinuity, and Slayer is good. Then it's Camp Lejeune, Comics, Flashin', Lantern, there's Cloman, there's NATO, and then we've got vectors to Cloman. So let's go and see if this actually works. So there is Cloman and Cloman. I'm going to take, let's see if we can take a Jade and put it after Cloman. Nope, can't do that. I think all we can do is delete. So I'm going to clear NATO. I'm going to clear Vector. I'm going to clear Cloman. And then I'm going to clear the discontinuity. And that should take us right in. So that should do that. And doing a little surgery like this is probably a good idea. That's going to help with your top of descent. And then this should take us right into our runway, and then also give us the missed approach. So all of that is looking really good. Airplane up here is in really good shape. We've got the APU running. We've got the temperature nice in the airplane. There's no real passenger boarding on this unless you're using GSX. So we can just continue with the process. So the next thing that I usually do is it's time to go and do the init and page B. So the first thing I'm going to do is look at my block fuel, and I'm going to read it right off the gas gauge. And there's total fuel 9.8. So let's go ahead and do 9.8, and that goes into block. The next thing I'm going to do is come over here to my weight and balance, and oh, look at this. Lo and behold, since we've put in the flight plan, now all of a sudden the electronic flight bag knows that we're doing San Francisco and San Diego. I'm going to hit update my METAR. That looks good, but now we're going to come down to the weights page, and it wants our zero fuel weight, which is 105.3. If you look at the flight plan, over here it says 105.17. So this is sort of like, think of this as your preliminary number, but after loading the airplane, it's now at 105.3. That's what I'm going to put down here in the zero fuel weight. So zero fuel weight is now 105.3. Zero fuel weight is right under block fuel, and now we've got a takeoff gross weight, but we got one more block, and that's zero fuel weight center of gravity. That's over here. The CG is 24.8. So 24.8, and now that's complete. Outstanding. Now then, I've got a number here, alternate. I believe this is alternate fuel, so we're going to do a little experiment here on this. My alternate fuel for the alternate is LAX, and that's going to be 2.1. It's either that or 31 minutes. This is a decimal point, so I'm going to go and do 2.1 and put that in for my alternate. I think that that's correct. I'm not sure, but that seems to make sense. We've got our taxi fuel, which should be 200. Taxi is 0.4. Trip time, route reserve. I think this is good. Init is done. So we are done with the initting. Okay, next thing we're going to do is take off and approach. Passengers are aboard now, so that's a good thing. Let's come on over here, and the next thing I'm going to look for is we're going to do this page. So this is the airplane page, and this is going to be our takeoff speeds. If you've got your flight plan in, this is going to automatically give you your wind, your outside air temperature, and your QNH. So that should be good. I have this airplane because it's an Airbus. I have it set up to be metric as opposed to imperial. So it's going to want hectopascals instead of inches of mercury. I will show you the conversion for that. But the first thing I think that we want to do is weight. I've seen several different videos from people on this airplane about what to put in there. I'm going to put in my takeoff weight. So my takeoff weight is going to be back here on init, page B, and our takeoff gross weight is 114.7. Maybe that's wrong, but that's the number I'm putting in. So 114.7 goes up here. 114.7. Maybe you do gross weight. I don't know, but I think we got the APU going. We're going to burn a little fuel on taxi, so I think it wants a little more of an exact number. The next thing we're going to do is flaps for takeoff, 15 and 15. So slats 15 degrees, flaps 15 degrees. Runway length. So this is going to be in meters, and if you've already set your flight plan in the FMS, then this is going to give you 2633 meters for runway length. If you're going to go a little bit shorter, do an intersection departure, that's where you could change it. Runway heading is going to be 028 degrees. Now, if you look down here at the charts, 028, well, we're going 014 degrees. The thing is there's a magnetic variation of 14. So I'll bet 14. Let's just do 14 and a variation of 14. 14 plus 14, 28. So what this is doing is this is giving you your runway heading with the magnetic variation in there. Now you can go and change it and put the other one in, but that's doing that for you. And then this is going to go, you can hit refresh, and this is going to get you the latest METAR. That's all good to go. This is good to go. I'm going to have anti-ice off. My air conditioning is going to be on. Let's hit calculate. And there's flex temperature, V1, rotate, and V2. So all of that's good to go. Let's look up here. One of the things that we can do now is we can turn on pitch trim and yaw dampers and auto thrust system. I usually do all of those three together. And the reason that we can do that is the IRSs have aligned and we're all ready to go. So this airplane wants you to have the IRSs aligned before you go in and do those three switches. Now that those are done, you can also see that we can go and put in a flex temperature. So we're going to flex to 59 degrees. So we're going to save a little bit of gas. So come down here and do flex 2 and 59. So there is 59 degrees. So a full takeoff is 100.7. We're going to do 95.2. We're saving fuel and wear and tear on the engine and probably putting out a little less pollution too. Exhaust. Over here, San Diego, we're going to look off to the side at 17 feet above sea level. That is our landing elevation. This thing goes in increments of 50. So right now there's 50 feet above sea level, there's 100 feet. So closest thing you can do is 0. We do a lot of rounding in this airplane. Another thing I'll stop and say here is this airplane is not about exact science. Okay, this airplane is older than, say, the fly-by-wire A320neo or the Phoenix A320, the older Airbus. This is even older than that. This is 1980s technology. So this is not going to be quite exact science on here. So there's a little bit more rounding, and you might describe its ability to follow the flight plan as perhaps a little more sloppy, but it's an older system, so we have to remember that. The next thing I'm going to do is I've seen over here, I can barely see my flight directors. So I'm going to go down and I'm going to turn this so I can see the green flight directors. I'm also going to turn down the map because the map is kind of blazing a little bit here. And I can read that a little bit better. You can also look down here and you can turn down the upper display. So there's 5. It just makes it easier to read. During the daylight, you can read it at full blast, but in this case, we don't need that. So now we've set the flex temperature. V1 and VR is 135 and 136. So takeoff. 135 goes on the top. 136 goes in the middle. And VR, you set it in the flight control unit. So right now it's set to 100. It's set to 100 here. Here we want V2 is going to be 141. So 141. Here's another thing where I have seen several things. So I've watched a bunch of videos on YouTube about this airplane. I've seen some real-world pilots come in and say, oh, you add 10 to that. And other real-world pilots are leaving it at the exact number. So I'm going to add 10 to it. I would like just a little bit of wiggle room like that. And so I add a little bit to that. I think it depends on your flying style and what you want to do. The next thing is our cleared altitude. So go over here to the offshore. Again, top altitude is assigned by ATC. I'm going to just go ahead and since we're not on VATSIM, I am going to go to 37,000 feet. Now then, if I start turning the knob here, you see it goes up by hundreds. How do you change it to 1,000? See my pointer right here? It's a normal mouse pointer. When you move it over the top part of the knob, there's an up arrow. There's a down arrow when it's on the lower side. That's sort of like pushing and pulling. In this case, you do the top arrow. That changes it to thousands. And it goes up a lot quicker. So 37,000. That looks good. Heading for takeoff. As a sim pilot for ages and ages and ages, I just go and get my runway heading, which is 014 degrees. So there we go there. But you remember down here, we put in runway heading plus deviation. There's another little bit of a gray area that I'm not sure what to do about. So there we go. I'm just going to go runway heading over there, and that looks good. Let's see. Our flight directors are both on. So flight directors are on and ready to go. And I think it's time to start pushing the airplane back. We haven't set our altimeters. The altimeter is, all right, it says 1015. If we go over to the little cloud, it says 1015 in the big text, but over here it says altimeter is 2999. We're in the US, so 2999. That's a one way to convert it. After you see we've set 2999, it says 1015 over on the other side of the altimeter. So if you come down here, you can see it already did 1015. This is your little altimeter converter, and this will work for you for conversions. So if you've decided to fly this with kgs, you can do a little conversion like that. Okay, so the altimeters are checked and set. Everything's looking good. Let's go here and use the checklist. Here is the A300, A310 checklist. Cockpit prep is kind of like done. Passenger signs. Passengers are aboard. Let's go ahead and do seatbelts. Passenger signs are on. Fuel quantity is verified. We're at 9.7. That's good. That's what we need. Navigation is done. Landing elevation, altimeters. Brake and anti-skid is by default set to normal and on. And so we are good at what we call to the line. Modern Airbuses, I think, have eliminated the to the line thing. But in this case, this is an older bus, so we go to the line. So now it's time to do pushback and start. Okay, so if we're going to go ahead and do that, let's look up here. Important safety tip on this old thing. So before you make any changes in electrical systems, make sure your next electrical source, the light is out. If the APU generator light was out and you turned off the external power, the whole plane goes dark and you have to reset everything. So make sure that your next source, the light is out before you disconnect power. Otherwise, it's very annoying. So we're going to go ahead and do that. We're going to come over to the plug. Let's go ahead and close bulk cargo, aft cargo, forward cargo. I'm going to pull the jetway, and we're going to go and release the GPU. Chocks remain in place for the moment. If we were on VATSIM right now, one of the hard things to do is with the parking brake here. You see I had tried to hit the transfer button. If the parking brake is on, transferring frequencies is difficult. So that's why it is that I make sure the chocks are in place, because I'll turn off the parking brakes there. And that's important to do. If you're using the TCA Thrustmaster, so let's go ahead and I'm using my controller. There's parking brakes off, parking brakes on. That actually works. So that's a cool thing that works with this airplane. Okay, so at that point in time, we can now do chocks. I'm going to pull those because my parking brakes are on, right? Yep, they're on. So chocks are pulled. Let's go back to Mr. Checklist here. So windows and doors are now closed. The beacon is now going to go on. Beacon is now on. And parking brake is on. And we're good to go there. So usually I've been using a little thing called Pushback Helper. In this case, we're going to go in, I'm going to try and use the pushback system here for the first time. And so to do that, all you do is hit the down arrow. And so there's the down arrow, and here comes your pushback truck. I've not used this one before. So we're going to try that. Have a sip of coffee, very important, especially for an early morning flight. And I really do enjoy an early morning flight. I think if I were one of the real world pilots, I would want to be on the early morning schedule. Incredible sunrises, get the day done early. You usually start your day before the bosses shows up. That's kind of a nice thing. And usually, okay, once it clicks like that, it's going to want to start pushing you. So then release your parking brake. You can spin the airplane a little bit here. I think we're just going to do a straight pushback. The lights behind here, so that white light really shows up in the back of the airplane. I don't know if that's accurate, but they are reworking the lights. And as we come in here, we can look off to the side. Generally, I like to push myself back behind that crew line. If we were on VATSIM right now, I think that this thing, once I hit the start the push button here, it kind of started pushing me. And if you're on VATSIM, you want to have your tug connected, but you don't want to be moving until a VATSIM controller tells you it's okay to move. And now let's go ahead and we're going to hit stop. There's stop. And as the plane coasts to a stop, I'm going to do parking brakes. And I think we'll see our tug disconnect and go away. So we're good to start some engines. Engine start on this airplane is pretty simple. We're going to turn on the remainder of our fuel pumps. So here comes the fuel pumps. And the next thing is ignition. So we're going to use two systems, A or B. One real-world pilot says that the way they do that is if the co-pilot is flying, they use starter system B. If the pilot is flying, they use system A. So there you go. You can hear the air has switched a bit. Let's hit start 2. And it goes from arm to open. Come on and look down here. You should see the N2 going up. The N1 is going to go up a little bit. And the other thing to look for if you want to be like a real pilot is look at the oil pressure. You also have digital representations over here at 20%. Look back here and turn on fuel. There goes fuel. One thing I neglected to do is if we were on VATSIM, we're expected to squawk mode Charlie on taxiways. All you have to do is turn it up to Xponder, XPNDR. XPDR, I think. XPDR and then Terra. So all you do is XPDR first. And there's our engine firing up there pretty good. Did you see the monitors flash over here and hear the click? That's the engine generator on the right side of the airplane, taking over all the systems on the right side of the airplane. Okay, so all of those have been taken care of over there. And once that generator is set, we can go up here and we can do engine number 1, arm. I haven't read about a 1-engine taxi yet on this airplane. So I would imagine they do a 1-engine taxi. Over on the newer Airbuses, you taxi on the left engine. So I'm not sure how that works. N2 is going up, N1 oil pressure at 20. We do fuel. And there goes that engine. I think that the engine start sounds are a little bit better. So I do know, and we saw from the changelog, that they're changing the sounds a bit. I've also really enjoyed the start sounds on this airplane. Being able to set up some wing views, I can't get any closer to the wing. Oh, there's a nice wing view like that. But I've wanted to get a little bit closer to look out the window, at least over on that side of the airplane, the left side. I was able to set a good one over here for the right side. But, you know, wing views, definitely important to have. Wing views are important. All right, all of this is looking good. And I think generators have switched over. Two engines are stable. So the next thing to do is come over here, and we're done with this. So ignition off. Let's turn off the APU bleed. And all of a sudden the packs go on. The isolation switch automatically closes for you. Wow, that's pretty awesome. The next thing that I do, and I've heard, this is another thing where I've watched several videos. Some real-world pilots say you don't turn on the probe heaters unless it's snowing, but otherwise you don't turn on probe heaters until after the ground crew is clear from the nose of the airplane because they get really hot. The next thing that I always suggest on this old bird, look at those 2 engine generator lights, make sure they are out before you turn off the APU. Otherwise, your airplane goes completely dark and all of the other airplanes start laughing at you. And all of this looks good. Now I'm going to go over here and I'm going to go from bright to dim on my panel. And all of this looks good. Back to the checklist. After start checklist. Pitch trim has not been set. Pitch trim we're going to find over here on the weight and balance page. And our pitch trim is going to be up 1.3. It's a little hard to see here. So there is up 1.3. That's probably pretty good. I think that they're going to change this to make this easier to see soon. But there's our pitch trim is set. The other thing it wants us to do is do our rudder trim reset. So the rudder trim needs to be 0. Just hit the reset button and that's all you do. Back to the checklist. Pitch trim, rudder trim, spoilers are not armed. They are now. Slats and flaps are not set. So slats and flaps. And you can use the TCA Thrustmaster Airbus setup for this. Basically 4 flap settings here. It's not flaps 1, 2, 3, 4, but there's 4 settings. And as you can see, they're coming down. And the flaps sound on this airplane, I'm serious, it's an old airplane. The flaps going down sound like the Millennium Falcon trying to start up. Very good sounds. ECAM status. The ECAM status is checked and nothing unusual is being shown on the ECAM, so that's good. Anti-ice, temperature outside the airplane is 9 degrees. We may want to turn on engine anti-ice here. So we need to be ready for that and the hand signal. With anti-ice like that, one of the other things that we might have wanted to have done is we might have wanted to have included that in our takeoff calculations too. But I'm a little lazy at the moment and want to fly, so we can do that later. But that's one of the things real-world pilots would do. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Profile and Nav. Profile and Nav are set, and it is taxi time. So let's do nose wheel. Almost universally, the real world pilots are telling us to do the runway turnoff lights. So we're going to do all 3 of those. Sit back in your gaming chair. Put your feet on your rudder pedals. ATC has given us a clearance to taxi out here. We'll do alpha all the way around. Okay, we're ready to go? Parking brakes off. Look over here. If your airplane is light, then it's going to start turning you, start rolling you. You're going to need a little power to complete your turn, but not too much. Once you get the airplane rolling, thrust idle is almost perfect. As usual with a jetliner, if you're doing a turn of 90 degrees, you want to be going 10 knots. The rest of it is 15 to 20. You know, here in the gate area, less in other areas. And so we'll add a little bit of power, and then San Francisco's nicely done. So all we've got to do is follow the lines. As far as anti-ice, as we look out the window, I see stars. I may not worry about icing here. But the temperature is right. So we may need to, you know, we may get an ice indication. Okay, around we go here. If you go online to, well, you're obviously online. If you go to YouTube and search A310 space Pan Am space safety, you will see an original safety video that somebody has uploaded for a Pan Am A310. I haven't checked the other airlines right now, and I don't have that scene set up here for the YouTube videos. But if you're looking to see an old A310, I'll try and find it and include that in the description. But if you just do do that kind of a search, you should be good. And it's a little nostalgic if you're an airplane geek, and I assume that you probably are if you're watching this video. I generally taxi this jet at thrust idle. You know, my ground speed right now is 12 knots. The real airplanes are taxiing at 12 knots. Some people taxi at warp factor 10. I'm trying to taxi as best I can to make it as real. There is a little thing down here. It says rudder inputs button. I haven't had to use this yet because I think that is, if your rudder gets a little wacky, you can stop it. But in this case, you see where the word says inputs? And if we look outside, you can see kind of we're right on the center line. That's how you know where your center line is. So if you put the center line right in the middle of rudder and inputs, you should be good to go as far as staying on the center line of taxi. I'm noticing that I'm losing the ability to see the flight director, so I'm going to continue to turn that down so that I can see the flight directors on takeoff. And everything else is good. So before takeoff checklist, flight controls. Where do we do that? Come on down here, and there is a button called FTCL, flight controls. And that was actually not it. That one was fuel. Let's see if we can see it here. Flight control, F/CTL. There we go, that looks better. And if you come over here, we've already done the test for our USBs. There's the elevator all the way up, neutral, down, neutral. I did it the opposite direction. Left aileron, right aileron, it goes back to neutral. Now the rudder is attached, so if we do the rudder test, well, I think I've got them separated from the nose wheel. There's right, there's left. Did that turn me? It turns you a little bit, but not much. I think probably you do those on the before you start to taxi, and then turn it off. So flight controls are checked. TCAS. No flight controls. We've done the briefing. Slats and flaps are confirmed at 15 and 15. Let's see, performance in FMS. They say check it and read it. V1 is 135, VR is 136, V2 is 151. Okay, here's our turnaround on Alpha. As we continue around here, takeoff config check. So this thing is you're turning around, hand down like that, and hit this little button right here, and it's going to go config check. Now, one of the things you could do is before you get the airplane started up, one of your pre-checks that you could do is hit that button, and it will say all sorts of problems because you're not set up. And so they'll actually do a config check on that. And transponder is set. We're going to just squawk 2000 right now. And around we go. We continue to do our nice little taxi here. Nice cabin view. If you're taxiing along in this thing, so get yourself centered up here. If it's not too windy, chances are you'll stay centered up. If you listen, back here, the plane just rattles along as an old vintage airplane probably would. So between the flap sounds in this airplane and the rattling that goes on back there, it's rather entertaining. Okay, we are coming up. There's taxiway Golf, Hotel, Mike 1 is next. So we are going to look for Mike 1, cross 1 left, and get ready for 1 right. I may be seated a little bit too far back here in my chair, so I feel like my head is kind of where it's supposed to be. I suppose I could be a little more like this for my center position. But I also have a hard time seeing beyond the lights here, so I don't see the taxiway light ahead of me. So if we look all the way around, okay, now I'm centered in my seat. Okay, next taxiway, that is, I think that the lights outside here kind of blaze a little bit and it's hard to see. There's Mike. And then I think this should be Mike 1. That said Mike 2. This is the one that I think gets us across. Or you could taxi around behind it. I think this is going to be faster. Kind of hard to see. There's no lights on this. But I think there is a little yellow line. So I think this is Mike 1. And then this is going to get us ready to go. So across 1 left, over to one right. And I think it's almost time to go. Tower just called and said, are we ready to go? Oh yeah, we're ready to go. So they're gonna say after takeoff, winds, whatever at whatever, 1 right, clear for takeoff. So I'm gonna come up here and I'm gonna do my strobes on. I do strobes on like this right now because that says, hey, this airplane is getting ready to go on a runway or is on a runway. Pay more attention to me. Might need a little power. We got to go around a turn here. And there is our entrance to the runway. So now all of a sudden strobes are flashing. Pay more attention. This airplane's going to do more than just taxi. Roll on around here. Transponder to Terra. And cabin, TCAS, packs, ignition, anti-ice, everything is all nicely set there. And it's almost time to go. One of the things I read is you don't turn on your landing lights until you're lined up down the runway. It does several things. First of all, the landing lights say, hey, We are, this airplane is serious about flying, so we're going to do something serious now. But you don't turn it on until you're running right down the runway here, because maybe there's an airplane on the other side. You might blind them because they're really bright. In my case, what I do is I go throttles up just a little bit. We're at 24%. I take it up to about 30. Look down. Do I see my engines are stable? Push it forward to 40%. There's 39, 40 stable. I'm going to hit the toga button, or in this case, it's going to be the flex button because we set up flex. I'm now steering with rudder pedals. Right hand remains on the throttle until V1. One of the things that I really wish that developers would do, though, is, and this does it on the PMDG, I really wish they would start including speed callouts on takeoff rolls. Because we're looking down there and we want to look outside. There's V1 and rotate. There's flight directors, positive rate, gear. Climbing a little bit too steeply. So long, San Francisco. We missed the terminal. Up a little bit more. Right turn. There we go. Center the flight directors. A little closer to center, and then AP engage. We're above 200 feet on the ground. I will usually engage my AP sooner rather than later, especially on a busy departure, because we're busy. There's not two people in the cockpit, and by now ATC is saying contact departure, and it's sort of like, I'm doing a bunch of other things. I neglected to set my auto brakes to max for takeoff, so I forgot that one. Landing gear is off. Speed brakes are disarmed. We have a couple of tight turns around here, so at SEPTI here, I'm going to keep my speed. My flaps are still out at the moment. That's probably a bad way of keeping your speed down, but I don't want my speed up yet. And it's turning the wrong way. Airplane, what are you doing? All right, now you tried to turn the right way. Not doing it. I'm going to center my heading. I'm going to take control. Again, I think that that's because this is an old airplane. And because it's an old airplane, it's not going to fly some of these things in a precision manner like a newer airplane. So you've got to be ready to do that. So let's do our turn. If we want to make sure that we're following this, let's see how we're doing. Well, not so bad. So our next spot is to go direct to whammy. So we're going direct to whammy here. Okay, there's an intercept point. We're going to continue to go to that intercept point. There's that intercept point. As we roll out on here, I'm going to go ahead and go flaps 1. That's going to let the airplane speed up a bit. That might not be the way to do this. That's what's working for me. And then once we go to flaps 15 and 0, it'll start its speed up here. There were no speed restrictions going out. Okay, we're coming up on intercept here. Let's zoom the map out and click. Let's zoom the map out another click. I want to see whammy. There's whammy. Continue the turn. And now we're going to basically go direct to whammy here. So we're doing pretty good on this, but I think in this airplane you really need to be ready to take control. Okay, we're doing pretty good. Let's go and now do a direct to whammy. There's Seagull, Cypress, Mickey, and Daisy. So the only thing we can do is whammy didn't show up. Let's do Seagull. And insert, come on back up here and do nav. So we did direct to Seagull instead. Maybe we were too close to whammy. There's 10,000 feet. I should have done my slats up a little bit sooner for the speed up. But you can see how busy we were going out. 10,000 feet, we can also do landing lights off. We'll also do those turn off lights and the taxi light. I'm gonna ring the no smoking sign off and on. Let them know that sterile cockpit is done. We are direct to Seagull, passing 11,000 feet. I have seatbelts on, no smoking is on. The airplane has put itself into climb mode, so good airplane. And we appear to be in profile and nav. We do have a couple of things. We're supposed to be above 16,000 feet at Seagull. I think we're gonna make that departure constraint just fine. You see the little blue line here? That is our heading. All you have to do is click the top part of the heading bug to keep that basically straight up so you know your course. After this takeoff, we're not so bad, so we can sit back, gently take your feet off the rudder pedals, and look outside and get ready for a really, really, really nice sunrise out of San Francisco. 13,000 feet, there's 14. We may be getting a call to go to another center here. Maybe to center out of departure. I don't believe that terrain radar works yet. I have heard, from what I understand, weather radar does work. Right now, the weather radar is set to 15 degrees up. That's 5 degrees or so up. You want to have that tilted up so that if it inadvertently gets turned on, you don't cook the ground crew. Apparently, that's something that happens. It's radiation, so we don't want to be cooking the ground crew. We're doing pretty good. There's 16,000 feet. I think we're going to make it above 16,000. Any more here? Above flight level 220 at Cypress. And that's really about it. So not to worry there. So now it doesn't look like we made it all the way out to Whammy here. So now we're going direct. So Whammy was over here. I must have missed that completely. So we're going direct to Seagull here. The moving map is really nice to have, and I enjoy using it. They've done a really nice job on the latest Navigraph. Looking down here, I'm going to go, and usually I will put the basic flight plan over here, and I will go to progress over here, which is also, you know, econ climb. And so here's our climb. This is looking pretty good. There is fuel prediction. 4.2, we keep a close eye on that. I thought I put in this, I think this line here is supposed to be for my alternate. I thought I put in an alternate of LAX. Did I forget to do KLAX? I forgot to do that. So KLAX is our alternate. Return. Okay, let's go down to progress now. And now fuel prediction. Ah, look at that. LAX is in there. So that's good. Cool. 4.2 is our estimated fuel on board when we get into San Diego. As we look over here, I'm supposed to have 3.8. So I always, you know, if we're ahead of that number, that's good. If we're below that number, that's bad. I generally, this is going to be a across-the-pond airplane for me, so I'm paying particular attention to this. Part of the thing to pay attention to, though, is your optimum flight level. Our cruise is flight level 370. Our max is 38, our optimum, and I believe this has to do with fuel efficiency. And so the closer we are to the optimum, the less this number shrinks as we go, and that's the good thing there. And we are passing Seagull, passing 22,000 feet. I think that we're going to make this 26 just fine. That is our last constraint. So I'm going to go over here and put airports up now. And we're out over the water, so that's why no airports showed up there. I usually leave this on the 60-mile range on the map. If you start to go to 120, the airports on here start to get ridiculous. And right now I think it's showing all of the airports. So it's showing, the farmers' airports too. And so they're going to have to limit some of the airports. I think that's one of the things that's probably on their list. So at this point, I'm just using 60-mile range, and I leave it on the map. Here is our turn at Seagull. We're going to Cyprus, and just cruising right along. Total air temperature is in the icing range, but as we look outside, I don't see any preset. So I'm going to guess that we're not going to have to worry about icing. I have forgotten at 18,000 feet to do my altimeter. Altimeter to standard. Duh. See, I get kind of lazy with the new Airbus. The Airbus flashes at you. The Boeing, it just changes to amber. But the Airbus, the altitude reminder flashes at you, so you remember to do that at transition. This airplane, we're expected to remember things. Okay, I'm going to reset my heading bug again to straight up. In case the autopilot fails, that thing just points us in the direction we're supposed to be flying. We are still in climb mode. Nothing really to worry about at this point. We are probably getting switched around here with various frequencies. If we were to go and set this up the way it works in the airplane over in X-Plane, if we were talking on VATSIM, since they said they've changed all this, you're going to need this button here. So that button there on the radio is so you can talk. That's basically your microphone. And then you would push the center of this and turn it up. And if we look down here and kind of tilt down, you can see that by pushing it, it's up higher than the others. So you would pull it up, that way we can listen to that frequency, turn it up so we can hear it. Now over in X-Plane, the volume control here works. And so you can, if you've got a controller or another airplane that is particularly loud, you can turn that down. That being said, one of the best things that you could do is have the old Microsoft volume mixer. And I actually have this shortcutted on the taskbar so I can get to it quickly. And it isn't because I produce video on YouTube and Twitch. It's so that if we're on VATSIM and you get a really, really loud person yapping on VATSIM, you can turn down the volume on vPilot. On the other hand, you also, and this is more often than not, you get controllers on VATSIM that are very soft-spoken, and they're way away from their mic and you can't hear them. Okay, so the thing is you're going to want to turn down the sound of your airplane. And that's how you can turn down the sound of the airplane in case you've got a soft-spoken controller. So I usually like to have that, and like I said, I have it shortcutted over on my taskbar. One click and I can get to it. And that's an important tool to have, I think, in VATSIM. Not all airplanes have a volume control that works. And I don't know if this volume control works yet or not. I haven't tried it yet. But if it does, that's going to be cool too. On the other hand, you can't turn down the volume of your airplane with this. And if you've got a soft-spoken controller, at that point in time, you're kind of out of luck. So, okay, this is looking good. 32,000 feet. Usually at around 25,000, if there's no turbulence, I'm going to do seatbelts. Seatbelts are off, especially on a morning flight because, you know, they're going over to the Starbucks counter, they got a venti instead of a grande, and there's somebody back there that is in discomfort. It has happened to me once. It is a lesson I have learned. The Starbucks coffee company will be unhappy at me, but if you're at the airport, you're getting a coffee, the grande and nothing bigger. Unless you have an iron constitution when it comes to that thing. And of course, my bad luck, that flight that I learned on was a turbulent flight. So needless to say, the seatbelt sign stayed on a long freaking time. Okay, so you notice as we pass Cyprus here, the airplane overflew and it's gonna go and turn back on this. I don't know for sure. So rumor time here, I don't think that's a bug. I think that's the way this airplane works. This airplane is 1980s technology. I don't think that it flies a flight plan in a precision way like a modern Boeing or a modern Airbus does. Now, I could be wrong, but I just feel like that's what that was. You also probably notice now that the sun's coming up a bit, it's getting a little harder, so I'm going to go and start turning this up a little bit. Not a lot, but just a little bit. As the sun comes up, you're going to want to adjust those. I think on the newer airplanes that have all the computer LCDs, it automatically adjusts itself for you. This, of course, not modern, so you got to do it yourself. We did make a turn, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to do another heading hold. If you want to go and look at 120 mile range, you see all of a sudden more airplanes or airports are showing up. Again, this is why I leave mine usually at 80. We got a nice little tailwind of 33 knots. The other day on the spy flight on Twitch, we had a 107 knot headwind. Our ground speed was like 340 knots. It was ridiculous. Talk about slogging your way through ground. Right now, our ground speed's pretty good, 493 knots with a little bit of a tailwind. And we're coming up on our final cruising altitude now of 36,000 feet. And if we look down here, we should be in cruise power. That's been set. We're on Econ cruise here. So this is looking, whoops. This is looking good. I meant to zoom in a bit. So this is looking particularly good. Now then we can come over here and hit fuel prediction and see how we're doing. Uh-oh, 3.3. What did it say over here? 3.8. Panic. No, not yet. Now we're already up to 3.4. After you get to cruise, give it a little bit of time. Again, I don't think it's a bug. I think it's an old airplane. And so let's wait just a little bit. Let's give it about 5 minutes, and I'll bet this number gets back up into the 4 zone. I mean, seriously, we're at our cruise is 370, optimum is 380. We can't do anything better than that. So I feel like that's really about as good as it gets. So fuel prediction, I'm not going to freak out until maybe, give it another 10, 15 minutes. And if it's still holding steady or if it's going down, then it's sort of like, panic. But I'll bet it goes up. The other thing that this is doing is this is giving us a arrival time at San Diego, 15:22 Zulu. I'm flying real world time today. So it says 14:29. And real time, all of this is, so 15, what did it say? It's 14:29, 15:22, 14:30. So we've got about 50 minutes of flying time as we cruise down the California coast at Mach 8.0. That's pretty good. According to the flight plan basically gives us, if we look over here, the schedule We're supposed to be landing at 15:07 and at the gate at 15:10. I must have departed a little bit late today. We're supposed to be off the ground at 35 after the hour. It must have been a little bit of a late departure. This airplane I don't think this gives us on, on times like some modern jets, so chances are that was a little bit late, and so that's why we're going to be a bit late getting in. And this is it. We are at final cruise. Look at this. We're already at 3.7. Already. So this number, like I said, as time goes by, I think that this gets better and better. Now, there's a thing here in the flight plan. If we go over here, so this is page 3. If we go to page 4, this is the beginning of our checkpoints in the sky. And then by the time we get to page 6, we've got wind information. And most importantly, we've got descent winds down here. And so one of the things that we can do is we can plug in descent winds. Now we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 levels of descent winds. Here, if we go to progress and we do descent forecast, we've got 3 layers of winds that we can put in there. I'm guessing that we take the top winds and work our way down, and then we put the arrival wind down here at San Diego. So we're at flight level 370, so we would do the descent winds. So that's going to be 350 slash, the winds are 266 degrees slash, and they are at 29 knots. So I believe we go top down. I'm not 100% sure. Next is going to be flight level 310. So 310 is next, slash. The winds there are 274 and slash, and it's still 29 knots. And then the one below that is flight level 200. And the winds at flight level 200 are 276 at 29 knots. Boy, not much variety there. And then the last thing that we would pop in there is, and I assume we put this in sooner rather than later, but we can come over here to our cool little website and let's go to KSAN, San Diego. There it is. San Diego Information Romeo. Winds are 140 at 6. So 140 at 06. Now we have our descent forecast. There are no other pages. I can't go to a next page. I can't go up and down in this. So those are just the 3 that I think you get to put in. And I'm going to, again, assume we go from the top down. So there we go. Now we'll go back to progress. Optimum flight level is 381, 389. Fuel prediction. We're at 4.2. See, we've already popped up. That's already better for us. How about that? So I'd say we're looking really good here at the moment. If ATC calls and says for spacing, you need to reduce your speed, there's 2 ways to do it. You can use what I believe they call tactical mode. So tactical mode here, this is, we are at Econ Cruise. If they say we are at Mach 80, they want us to maintain Mach 0.76, you would put a 0.76 in here and enter, and I believe that sometimes that works. The more direct way is to go to altitude, hold, and adjust it yourself. Again, in this case, it might be pilot error, but I found the better way to do that is to just take control yourself. There's another thing that's happened on descents. So on descents, one of the things is if we're doing a profile descent and we want it to stop at 11,000 feet, sometimes this thing just sails straight down and continues descending even after that. I don't think that's a bug. I think that's the way the airplane works, because the other videos that I've watched, the real world pilots are going to level change and altitude hold on the descent. So I don't think that this airplane is as automatic as the newer airplanes. So as we're going on our descent here, I'm going to be doing altitude hold, level change, and my own speed management here. I think that that's kind of the way that this airplane's supposed to work. Again, it's just an older airplane. Okay, we're coming up on Mickey here. So on our flight plan, there's Mickey. Okay, there's Vandenberg. There's Daisy. There's LAX. We're doing pretty good here. Now, top of descent, in this case, I turn off airports. There's the 120-mile range. There's the big range. The closest I've found to a top of descent indication is this one right here, 160 miles. Now, there might be another one that I'm missing down here in the FMS, but I haven't seen it yet. I haven't seen a top of descent indicator on this one. So I will rely on this one here. We're 160 miles. Generally on this airplane, when we get between 80 and 100 miles is when I start my descent preparations. So the last thing I'll do with you here is we'll do after takeoff checklist. Slats and flaps are retracted. Landing gear is up and neutral. Neutral, so this is an old Airbus. There's gear down, gear up, and gear neutral. In a Boeing, it's called gear off. If you're having a hard time setting your auto brakes on landing, chances are it's because this is not in the neutral position. It needs to be in neutral. Packs are on, and the packs are up here, and you can see the packs are on, and altimeters are set. The after takeoff checklist is good. And there we go. And as you look out the window, you can see our fabulous sunrise. And this is kind of what makes it all so much fun. This is about the time when I'm going to go and get a second cup of coffee. So I hit pause on the recording. You should hit pause on the video until your airplane is between 80 and 100 miles from the top of descent. So when that hockey stick is between 100 and 80 miles, start up the video and we'll start our descent preps. In the meantime, now's the time that we just get to enjoy the view. Kind of a loud airplane, isn't it? Hey, welcome back. Thank you. We are getting pretty close to the time that we need to go and start thinking about doing the top of descent stuff. So if you take a look down here, you can see, we're beyond 80. So it is time to start getting serious about our descent here. So we are between 40 and 80 miles out. So the first thing that I usually do is go back to whatever website I'm using for a METAR and I refresh. Information Romeo is currently in place. I'm going to check this. Again, you can also get METAR information by looking at some real-world websites. You can also get it through Volanta, Sim Toolkit Pro, and I believe we can also get it through some weather information through Navigraph now too. But let's concentrate on that later. Right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Navigraph, I'm going to hit Edit, I'm going to get rid of San Francisco Gates, San Francisco Airport, and the departure, and that way all I have is comics, the RNAV, and the airport. If the airport is landing several different runways at the same time, I'm going to have all the charts for every active runway that they are using. Now, for the comics arrival, what's going to happen is ATC is going to give us a call and say we are clear to descend on the comics arrival. Prepare for the, in this case in San Diego, they usually tell you to be ready for the RNAV Zulu. So at this point, that tells me that I'm clear to descend to 6,000 feet. So the next thing that I'm going to do is come over here and top of descent, yeah, between 80 and 40. So let's go over here and we're going to dial this in, and I'm going to put in 6,000 feet. Remember earlier how we were talking about how it is that the buttons here? So here's a standard mouse pointer. You go up to the top, that changes it between hundreds and thousands in altitude select. The bottom button is going to go in arm the profile descent. So if you look over at the main primary flight display, you can see we have profile speed and altitude and nav are in green. Now let's go and hit the bottom part of the altitude, so the down arrow, and did you see that now we've got something labeled P descent, profile descent, and it's in blue. Just like newer Airbuses, blue, green means this is happening. Blue is an armed event that is due to happen soon. So we're doing pretty good here. So there's Bennett, you can see between 80, we're coming up on 40 miles from top of descent. While we're also doing that, let's also go and maybe we've gotten updated descent winds. We might want to plug that in. Fuel prediction, we're in great shape as far as fuel, so that's great news too. Takeoff and approach. So in this case, our configuration for landing, I'm doing flaps 30 and 40, so 30 on the slats, 40 on the flaps, and that would be the number 4 position on your TCA Airbus controller. The next thing that I'm going to do is come over here and go to the RNAV, and we're going to do an RNAV decision height here, and I usually just grab the first number here. We're a Category C airplane, so that's going to be 617 feet is what we do. So we put in 617, and plug that in there. It's also given us a final descent angle of 3.0. Is that what we're doing? This says 3.5 is the final descent. I don't know if we need to change this or not. Let's try and put in, it says 3.5. Let's put 3.5, see if it changes. I changed something. Oh crap, did you start descending me? It started, what are you doing? I think it started, maybe the wind just changed. It put me into vertical. Okay, this is not something you do. Okay, so we're not going to do that. Don't touch, no touchy on this one. Okay, so clearly we're not gonna do that. This is gonna be an RNAV descent, so the other thing to do is take a look here, and we've got a couple of altitudes. The real pilots are gonna come over here. Boy, I sure hope that didn't mess me up too bad. So on the descent, we need to be above 9,000 feet at Lantern, 230 knots, we got to slow down here, and 6,000 feet at Cloman. And those are really the only ones that we have here. So let's see if lantern. Okay, lantern says 230 knots or greater. And Cloman as 6,000 feet and 210 knots. That's about right. So those look good. Let's go to progress. We are still, it's got us an econ descent. We're still armed. We're at Mach 0.79. I don't know. I think I put us in econ descent mode. Here's the thing. In an airplane like this, in a flight sim environment like this, you're going to do what I just did. You're going to push a wrong button. Heck. So what do we do now? Well, clearly we've activated something in the airplane, and I don't think we can go back and fix it. But vertical deviation has popped up here now. P descent has popped up. My guess is, let's see what happens. So around Bennett, just between Bennett and Santa Catalina here was when we were going to start our descent. If the airplane starts descending then we're good. So let's see what vertical deviation does, and we'll kind of go from there. The point is you can fix things. You can keep going, and that's what we're going to do. And I have learned to never, ever, ever push that button ever again. Yeah, it's got vertical deviation is now shown up though. So vertical deviation here is 0. So we're not deviant from our descent path yet, but we could be. Another thing is VAP is now shown up here as 136 is our landing speed, approach and landing speed. I have always added something to that. All the videos that I've been watching here on YouTube, the real world pilots are just taking that number flat out and going with it. So they're not adding anything to it at all. So I don't know. Okay, Bennett SXM. So flight level 60 showing up here. If we get SXM, SXC, Santa Catalina, I'm thinking about the Princess Juliana SXM. You know, that's a really neat RNAV approach to do. That's a good one to do too. If we have not started our descent by then, we may need to do it ourselves. So we'll see if we can recover. Another thing about this airplane, which is so cool, you can go to the cloud, you can hit update METAR, and this will give you your latest METAR. Look at that. So we didn't even need to go and look at the internet. We'll get the METAR right there, which I think is awesome. This is something that sim pilots desperately need, is to be able to get this kind of weather information. Okay, vertical deviation hasn't moved. We're at 37,000 feet. Program descent is still enunciated. Vertical deviation is still 0. If we pass Santa Catalina, we may need to do something. Come on, airplane, bail me out. We're on YouTube. Don't do this to me. On the other hand, you know, there's a lot of these little buttons here that are not, that, you know, there is a documentation about this in the flight manual that came with the airplane. Uh-oh, program descent has started flashing. Now, usually, when I don't just start pushing buttons, this starts flashing about 5 miles away, and now profile descent has been turned to green, and we have started descending. Thank you. Airplane just bailed me out. So, okay, we're good. Now let's look down here. Vertical deviation, I believe, changes a little bit on the descent here. Well, not that one doesn't, but this one has. So this one shows we're 800 feet above our flight path. So that says that we're a little high and getting higher. Well, then the vertical deviation meter here is in the middle. What do we believe? Vertical deviation is still high. Well, it's dropping our speed down a little bit. Now all of a sudden we're going down like we mean it. This thing is not showing up anything here. This thing is still going up. We may have a problem there. In the middle of all of this, we could also take a quick look at fuel prediction. 4.2, we're in great shape. We're not losing gas. This hasn't changed. Progress does show we're 94 miles out. That number continues to grow. What do you say we throw out a couple of notches of speed brake? So if we look out the back window, you can see we got some speed brake out. Vertical deviation now says plus. Well, we're descending a little bit faster. The thing is this airplane is also kind of old. So this is when you start seeing real-world pilots go and start taking control themselves. We're descending at about 240 knots at Mach 0.68. I think we're going a little slow. This vertical deviation has not changed a bit. Let's also go ahead and change and put in constraints. So right now, this wants to be between 15 and 19 at Lejeune. That's 20 miles away. I think we're going to be high on that. We could do some math and stuff, but I'd much rather do other things. Let's do seatbelts. I usually do that at about 25,000. We're going to probably be busy. And the other thing that I wanted to do was mention the throttles on landing. Now, if you've had this airplane up and you've done a ILS, you know that as the mechanical voice counts down 50, 40, 30, 20, 5, as you're landing, at 30, the auto throttle will idle your throttles. That will not happen on an RNAV or VOR approach. You've got to do that yourself. So my strategy is I'm going to have my speed set here, and I'm going to have my auto throttles on the descent, and I'm going to have our descent speed in here, and I'm going to look at my N1, and if it's descending me at about between 45 and 50% N1, I will then go disconnect the auto throttle, and I will try and have my throttles set about there. No guarantee I'm going to make it, but that's kind of the way that I do this. I don't know if that's going to work, but again, you have to do your own throttles for landing. Otherwise, it's just going to keep going and going and going, and you run out of runway and run off the evening. You run off the end of the runway, make the evening news, and it's bad. So anyway, you've got to do your own throttles on this too. By then, we're going to be off of profile descent anyway. We're going to be managing our own descent as we go around here. We'll be managing our own speed around the turn here. We got to do that too. In fact, let's go to 30 miles. Between 19 and 15 and 10 miles, I think we're actually going to probably make that just fine. I'm going to put my speed brakes back down, and let's see what happens. The vertical deviation is just all over the place here. I don't know why. I'm gonna just, let's ignore it. Let's ignore that. In the past, if you've been watching me over on the on Twitch, on the Spy Flight, I've also been setting a decision height. That has been wrong. You set a decision height for the radar altimeter on a Category 2 or Category 3 landing. Otherwise, we don't use that right now. So that's not used for what it is that we're going to do on this. Okay, we're at 25. We're not descending fast enough. I'm going to put speed brakes back out. I don't think we're going to make the above and below at Lejeune. It's got my speed now down to 250 here. I mean, this is really slowing us down here. So this isn't right either. And chances are it's because I pushed that button. I shouldn't have done it. Now, ETC, they're probably saying, excuse me, what are you going so slow for? There's 5 airplanes backed up behind you. So what would we do? In this case, I would go to level change, and I would go and get my speed back up to at least 250, which is what they might be wanting us to do on the auto throttle there. And are you going to go and do that for me? There's our speed coming up. Now, we're also high. So we're a little high on this. Next, we have to be between 12 and 15. Vertical deviation is not our friend, probably because I messed with that button. See what happens? You could at this point also go over here to vertical speed. Important safety tip. VL does not engage vertical speed. That's VOR lock. And this is your ILS or your ILS, glide slope and localizer. So to activate this, you push the button. And then you can dial it around there. Okay, 21,000, so we're still a little fast. Now, though, we have a 230 knot speed restriction at Lantern. So I'm going to go ahead and dial the 230 in now. And hope that the airplane starts to slow me down to 230. And we can look and see, yes, the airplane's slowing down to 230, so we're good to go there. I probably did that a little bit too soon, but, oh, and it stopped our descent to put us right there, so that was the priority. I'm also going to reset my heading bug to remind me that this is our direction of flight. Between 12 and 15, so we're 5,000 feet high. I've still got speed brakes out a little bit here, so that we'll descend a little bit faster. See what happens if we put it away. So the speed brakes, we're holding 230, but now it's just 1,500 feet per minute. There's 16, 17, 18. We're not going to make it. So I'm going to go speed brakes out. It's going to hold 230, but we're going to descend faster. 18,000 feet, altimeter setting. Again, this is going to give us in hectopascals. If you're being digital like, being metric like I am, you can get the altimeter up here, 300. I'm going to go ahead and hit the update button one more time. And it didn't change. And by the way, I'm not going to read the departure METAR. I'm going to read the arrival METAR. And the arrival METAR is 2999. So just dial it down, 2999, or dial it up. There we go. Altimeter is checked and set. How is our descent going? 230 knots at Lantern. We're supposed to be at 9,000 feet. We're not going to make this at all. So at this point in time, ATC is probably saying, dude, what are you doing? You're not going to make it happen. So they're going to go probably pull us out of the sequence and make it, and vector us around to help us lose altitude. So in this case, heading select, and they're going to turn us to 090 degrees. Get out of the sequence. You're causing trouble. But what we're going to do is we're going to do a 360 here, and that's going to bleed off the altitude for us. I put my speed brakes away. We're between Flash and Lantern. At Lantern, we have to be at 9,000 feet. And 230 knots. We've already got one of those taken. So now because I've taken control, I'm going to go over here and I'm going to dial this to 9,000 because we're not supposed to be below 9,000 here. We have to be above it. So I'm going to put in 9,000 and let's go ahead and do another turn. Head 360, head north. So around we go. There's 4,000 feet. But again, we're going to stop ourselves. So we've got control of this, sort of. But I think that by now, most of the real world pilots in this have taken control from profile and they're just doing it themselves. Because I think that the profile in this airplane was just old. This was their first attempt. Okay, there's 360 degrees. We're at 13,000 feet, not bad. Let's continue the turn to 270. I'm choosing the north, south, east, west points in the compass just to make it easier for me to do 90-degree turns. It's easier to remember that. It's also getting a little bit bright outside. I'm going to turn up the level on the primary flight display. Probably the navigation display is just good, just fine. We're coming down to 12,000 feet, so we'll head 270 for a little bit, bleed off a little bit more altitude, and we're sort of in much better shape. If you haven't noticed, coming back here, the passenger information is accurate. We're 11 minutes of flying time. This switches between metric and imperial. So now you can see it's 51 miles instead of kilometers, which is kind of cool. There's 11,000 feet. We'll continue out by flash here. Oh, all of a sudden, vertical deviations kicked into gear. Now it says we're a little on the high side. Let's see, VAP, speed is 135 for landing, so that is going to update just a little bit too. Coming up on 10,000 feet, I think let's go ahead and do another 90-degree turn, 180. I think we're going to make 9,000 just fine. The next altitude, looking ahead, after the 9,000 at Lantern, it's 6,000 at Cloman. So we're just going to go ahead and do 6,000 here. After we hold 9,000 at Lantern. There's 10,000 feet. We can come up here and do landing lights. And we'll also, I'm seeing a lot of the other pilots, the real worlds, they're lighting up, turning out all on. Okay, so now as we come up here on our flight path, ATC is saying direct Lantern. So I'm going to go ahead and we'll go do direct Lantern. I'm not going to do it direct. I'm going to make the turn myself. Landing lights are extended and on. So we're going to turn towards Lantern here. I've kind of found that it's best to make your turn with this old thing. Get on a nice gentle path to this. And then come on down here, do direct to Lantern, insert, come on up here, go back to nav, and then the airplane will take care of it for you. So at least this is going to take care of us here. We're holding 9,000 at Lantern, so we're not too low. The next thing we'll do is above 7,000 feet at X-Man. So we have to be above 7,000 at X-Man. We don't want to be below that. So our next altitude that we're going to put in here, you can also see altitude hold. So I'm going to put that 7,000 in here now, and then we'll just do level change, and then that will hold us there. And so this is how we manually step our way down. At Cloman, we not only have to be at 6,000 feet, but at 210 knots. And as you go around this turn, you want to be closer to 180 knots. Coming up on Lantern, so there's a mile away. At this point, let's do the map one last click. And 230. Everything else is pretty good here. We don't really set any of this stuff. I'm going to put this back over here on takeoff and approach. There is Lantern. And after Lantern, X-Man's level change, down we go to 7,000 or above. And down we go. And the airplane is going to put us right there. We got the little banana thing there, so that's actually pretty good. So we're going to make that just fine. What do you suppose would happen if we go to and put in... No, actually, let's not do that because we have to slow down to 210. So let's slow down and then go to 6. Coming into the clouds, what's the temperature outside the airplane? It is 14 degrees. We do not have to worry about icing in the clouds. We'll still keep an eye on that. You can see San Diego Airport is directly ahead. If we were on VATSIM, but there was no ATC, now would be a good time to say San Diego traffic. There is a Pan Am A-310 approaching X-Men, setting up for the RNAV, runway 27, San Diego. And if you've been kind of nervous about going on VATSIM and stuff, if you're flying along by yourself, start doing what I just did. Okay, let's go ahead, and next thing is, well, let's go ahead. Let's do 6,000, level change, and 210. Let's see if it handles it both together. So speed's going down, 210. Oh, look at this. It also just went down and is giving us, well, vertical speed popped up for a second and then went away. So now it's reduced our speed to 210, and there goes the little banana line. Over here at flaps, we could have done flaps 15 at 245 knots. Your flap extension speeds are conveniently listed right here. And you see where it says 210, we can go flaps 15 and 15. So we're good to go there. Our speed's 210. Everything's looking good. Auto brakes. This airplane's auto brakes, I've noticed, are pretty steady, pretty strong, so I'm going to go auto brakes low. I'm also going to arm my speed brakes, start getting ready, and let's go over here, and we're going to do checklist. And we'll come up here. Okay, this is something I don't understand. So one of the things that happens is it snaps itself. It gets snappy and it snaps to the bottom and you can't use it, which is incredibly annoying, and I don't know how to fix that. So if you go online and do a Google search for A310 space checklist space PDF, somebody will have posted that checklist. So you can use a printed version, and I actually think it's a good idea to have some printed versions of your checklist in your sim cockpit. Passenger signs are on. Briefing has been done ad nauseum. ECAM chat status is checked and clear. Altimeters are set. Minimums are set. Ignition is as required. Landing elevation is set. Approach checklist is done. Okay, there's Cloman. Next altitude is going to be 5,000. So let's go to 5, level change. I'm also going to go ahead and do 180 for these turns. When you've got 90-degree turns in a big old heavy jet like this, and you've got these kinds of tight turns like that, I'm going to want to go and start throwing out, get that speed down. Unless ATC says to keep going, and that's not going to do you very good. Next flap is 195. There's 195. Flaps are 3 or 10 and or I believe what 15 and 20. 20 and 20. Okay. Sounds like a kind of adult beverage. Vertical deviation has changed a little bit here. You can see our descent is pretty good. I'm going to now go to 4,000. And I'm going to let it go down a little bit more because we are going to get busy. Let's go to the RNAV page. That platform altitude again is 2,000 feet. As long as we're staying above those altitudes, I think we're in good shape. Oh, wait a minute. That was not vertical deviation. That was something else. So we need to be above 4,800. That's good. I'm going to go to 3,000 here. And that's going to be at Christner. And at this point, I think that we're going to not hit any mountains. So I'm going to go to my platform altitude of 2,000. We're at 180 knots. Remind ourselves of our VAP speed, which is 135. That looks good too. Now is an incredibly good opportunity for you to make sure you're set in your chair. If you're like me and you kind of get folded up in a chair and stuff like that when you're flying along, make sure that, you know, you're facing the screen. You can get your controls. Gently put your feet on your rudder pedals. And we are supposed to be above 3,700. We're a little low right now. Vertical deviation is all of a sudden kicked into gear. Now they say with this airplane, you need to be in full configuration on the way down. Generally what they're going to do is basically ATC though says 180 knots until Rebo. And then do your final slowdown. So they usually are doing keep your speed up. If you're not ready to do that, go ahead and start reducing your speed. Okay, let's see. Landing gear. I don't see the placard for landing gear, but I'm gonna guess we could do gear. Let's do landing gear down. 180, you've got to be able to do that. I'm sure there's a placarded speed there. There's 180. So we're a little low. We're at 3,200, 2,700. We're a little low, but that's okay. Looking outside, we're going to start getting ready to go visual. We're coming up on Rebo. Again, our speed is 134. I still like to add a little bit to that. But let's go ahead and trust what the real world pilots are saying. I'm going to do this now. So 134 for landing. There's 134. I'm going to go flaps full. There's 2,000 feet. Captain's got the airplane. We're going to start down about 800 feet per minute. I'm not going to do too much with my course heading now until I can see the runway. I'm adjusting my trim to hold that descent. That's the sound that the airplane makes when you're holding the trim down. Okay, vertical deviation shows me a little bit high. I'm starting to see through the mist. Now we're going to start to catch up. Getting off to the side here. Definitely catching up with that. Get some help from your trim. Now then, we're fairly decent on our descent. So look out the window. There's the runway. We're a little off to the side. Get back on course. We're at about 66, 67% on our throttles. So there's 70 auto throttle disconnect. Now the captain's got control of the throttles, and we're at about 67. There's our runway. Get turned back over here. That looks good. Deviation, we're really relatively good at the moment, but this airplane does start that fall like a rock thing. Lined up pretty good. Speed's coming down a bit. Add your own throttle. The throttles on this airplane are not instant joy.
100.
So you need to be ready to do, you need to be ahead of them on this.
Sync rate. Sync rate.
Pulling my own throttle back a little bit, although you don't really do that.
60, 40, 30, 20, 10, 5.
Reverse. Idle reverse is pretty good unless you're afloat like I did. So full thrust or maximum. Manual braking. When you start floating like I did, okay, wait a minute. What's going on here? I've got windsocks pointing at each other. I think we've got a violation of the laws of physics over there, folks. Seriously, what was that all about? Welcome to San Diego. Off the runway. Speed brakes go down. There's United Land up there. We can't have that. Okay, landing lights off. Strobes off. APU switch on. Starting up the APU. Yeah, we can't be having violations of the laws of physics like that. Okay, flaps can go up too. Unless you're in the snow zone. Now, in Scandinavian Airlines, from what I've read, it's Scandinavian, you leave the flaps down in the snow zone until you get to the gate, and you can have your flaps, examined to make sure that you have you've got all the snow off of it. Transponder to Terra, and a nice gentle turn into the gate. We still don't have a good universal gate guidance system. You can get gate guidance coming in via GSX. So one pilot was doing a little thing, and I thought it was pretty cool. So we want to go, and you see the stop line here? We're going to go to this middle stop line. And what this real-world pilot was doing is saying draw an imaginary line from there all the way to where it is that, you know, out to the side. So in this case, from this line, it's basically out here to between the guy standing and that baggage loader, okay? So release your brakes, and then what you do, if you're on your center line, you see where the electronic flight bag is? You wait until those little things get just behind. Remember, you're sitting ahead of the nose wheel. So when that sort of gets up here with the corner of the EFB, there's the guy, there's the line, and how about there? Let's stop and see how we did. Okay, not even close. Not even close. But again, see how far ahead of the wheel we are? So there's this little line. Now, this is the first time I've ever done this, so I get a little slack, right? Okay, there's that line right there. Let's come down here and let's just do parking brakes for a second. Now, let's come out and let's see how we did. So there is our imaginary line. Okay, the imaginary line was basically back through the middle or the end of that loader. Now then, let's look over here. Okay, the middle of the end of the loader is like way back there. So this did not work out well for me at all. But this is how you learn this stuff. So there you go. APU is up and running here. So we can come down here and do engine number 2, engine number 1. Transponder's gonna go off here. Let's come on over here and we're gonna do seatbelts. And we can go ahead and do the external lights and the nose light. You actually want to do those as you're approaching in because apparently even landing lights kind of blind the ground crew. Let's go ahead and turn on the APU bleed. And then what you do is you come and look over here at this little thing here, PSI differential between inside and outside. And if it's 0, you can open the door. If it's not, you got a problem. So that you look at your you look at those. Come on over here. We are going to want chocks in place. I need a ground power unit. I'm going to call my jetway. Open the cargo doors. And then we come on down here. It shows the doors open. Because the chocks are in place, we're going to release the parking brake. Because Airbus brakes get hot. And our doors are open, and I think we sort of made it. Let's do one last thing that I like to go and do, and that is check out the fuel. And to do the fuel, you go over here and clear out the ECAM. Look over here, our gas is at 3.1. We were doing a little messing around after landing, but we were supposed to have 3.8. Okay, so the difference between 1 and 8 is essentially, what was my taxi fuel here? 200. I think we were relatively close on this one. Remember though, also, I was high and air traffic control made us do the 360. That's their fault. But the minute you deviate from your flight path like that, you get to go into that final reserve, and so we did. And so from there, here we are. We made it. Nobody was hurt, nobody was arrested. The only other thing we would do here is we would come and we're going to turn off our fuel pumps. If you're going to leave the APU on, leave that one fuel pump on. You could also punch in external power, and that's going to make the APU work a little bit less as it powers the airplane here. And I neglected to turn off the beacon at the gate. Nav and logo lights are the only things that we should have on. And at that point in time, we can say airplane is secure. Passengers are getting off the airplane, and how about that? This, by the way, is a really nice payware scenery for San Diego, and I really feel like, you know, this is a nice payware and definitely worth your time for sure. And I think, you know, we kind of made it here. I totally forgot to record this using the flight recorder. But we can come over here to Sim Toolkit Pro, and we can see that my landing rate was 277, so typical for me. Not great, not terrible, but it did file the flight plan, and so we can go ahead and look at other information, or we can hit the dashboard, and we could go and try and find another flight. How do you do that? This is so simple. Come over here, go to your favorite flight tracker. Let's go to FlightAware, which is the one I use. And let's go to KSAN, San Diego. Look down here. Look at departures. What do we have for departures? Well, we could go up to LA. There's a Sacramento departure. Here's San Jose. There's SeaTac Kennedy. This is how you could go and figure out what your next flight is. And that's just a really cool way of doing continuing service, which is what's going to happen. This airplane isn't just going to sit here. New pilots, new passengers, they're all going to be getting aboard and wanting to go and go someplace new. And at this point, we can go ahead and do a little bit of a drone camera here and see what a great day it is in San Diego. So thank you so much for flying along with me. I hope that some of this helped out a little bit. I'm still learning this airplane. There is still so much to learn about this airplane. I always like to say this isn't about the right way versus the wrong way. This is one simulator pilot to another saying this is what works for me, and I hope it's what works for you. I'm still new here on YouTube. Leave your questions and comments. I'm reading them all. And in fact, a real-world pilot gave me some great hints about the 737. I'll include that in the next video. That's going to be a week from today here on YouTube. Great if you come over and fly with us on Twitch. We are flying every day on Twitch, Tuesday through Sunday at 1900 Zulu. If you liked what you saw, I'd certainly like to encourage you to come on over and drop a sub or two if you'd like to do that. I also need to say a thank you to subscribers and donors on Ko-fi and Patreon. I hope you are having a really great week enjoying this absolutely amazing program, and I will look forward to seeing you on another flight here on YouTube and tomorrow on Twitch. Cheers.